hey going, today we're going to be doing a video on the Beaumont children. So this is going to be a mystery video. I'm going to start doing these on my channel as I said in my last vlog. So today's one is actually on the Beaumont children. The reason I decided to pick this case today is because it actually happened here in South Australia where I live, and my parents were kids around when this happened, so I'm going to just get a little bit of insights from them. All this information was either found on websites or through watching some documentaries, so if I have got anything wrong, it is not to offend anyone and I do apologise. So let's get straight into it. So on the 26th of January 1966, which was actually Australia Day at the time, 3 young children known as the Beaumont children disappeared from a popular beach in Adelaide known as Glenelg. Glenelg still today is like one of the most popular beaches here in Adelaide. And being on Australia Day, it would have been a very crowded beach. Like it goes off at Glenelg when it's summer, especially on Australia Day, and it would have been school holidays for the kids. These kids have never been seen again, no evidence, nothing. So there was 3 children, the oldest being Jane, who was 9 at the time, Anna, who was 7, and a little boy called Grant, who was just 4 at the time of the disappearance. Something I find so chilling about this case, and another reason I picked it, is my mum's siblings that were a bit older were actually at the beach the day that these kids went missing. They were at the very same beach when these kids disappeared. So it really could have happened to anybody's kids, but it unfortunately happened to the Beaumont children. It was huge. This was a big deal in Adelaide. So it was a really hot day. It was recorded to be around 40 degrees the day that these kids went to the beach, which is very hot. And when it's that hot, it's such a dry heat here in South Australia, all you want to do is be in the water, like be at the beach, especially on school holidays. And back in those days, like there wasn't really much else to do. So the kids actually had been to the beach quite a few times before. This wasn't their first trip to the beach. Around 10 a.m, the kids left the house to catch a bus down to Glenelg. Before they left, their mother Nancy gave them just enough money to pay for the bus fares and get them lunch, but no more than that. So pay attention to this because it will be more significant as we get further into this about how much the mum gave her. So the mother walked them to the bus stop, which was just around the corner from their house, saw them off, no biggie, told them that they had to be back around 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Like I said, it wasn't the first time they'd been to the beach, so this was a very normal trip for them. The mum saw them off and then the mum would meet them back at the bus stop later on. I know it seems quite young to have a 9, a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old go to the beach without parental supervision, but speaking to my parents around that time when this happened, 1966, times were very different to what they are. Obviously there wasn't the technology that they have now, and it just wasn't as well known for kids to disappear like this. So people used to leave their back doors open, they used to, you know, not lock your car, they'd let the kids play on the streets. It's just the rule was come home when the street lights come on. Also, like I said, it was school holidays at the time, so it would have been very, very, very busy down at the beach, plus Australia Day. Glenelg's where everybody goes, so I'm sure the mum didn't fear too much because there would have been so many people around. The beach was actually only 2 kilometers away from their house, so they did live really close to the beach, and they were quite well known in the community. The oldest daughter, Jane, was very motherly, so she used to often take her siblings and even sometimes her friends, catch buses to different places. She would always take them out. Just very mature by the sounds of it for her age of just 9, and she used to catch buses all over Adelaide and never had an issue. So it's not really a matter of them getting lost because they'd done this trip so many times. She knew what she was doing, she was very aware. Apparently she used to change her younger brother Grant's diapers, she used to put them to bed. It just sounds insane for a 9-year-old to do all these things, but very, very mature. So Nancy was expecting the kids to be home around 1 p.m. She waited at the bus stop for a few hours waiting for them and started to really panic when the kids hadn't shown up. So their father, Jim, was away in Snowtown for work at the time. He was a businessman, used to travel for work. Arrived home in the afternoon when he was met by Nancy. He was panicked that the children hadn't come home. The father did not waste time. Jim went straight to the beach, crowded beach, might I add, looking for the kids. So after no success in finding the kids, I believe it was on 5 or 6 p.m. that he went to the police station and reported the kids missing. So the police didn't waste any time. They went straight down to the beach, started looking for the kids. They checked all the sand dunes around the actual beach, the surrounding suburbs. They had absolutely no luck finding the kids, no evidence, no bags, nothing. And after 24 hours, this was a nationwide case. It was covered quite well on the TVs. So the next day, the thorough searches started. Everybody was aware of what had happened. They had on land and sea searches were done. It went down as like one of the biggest searches in history of South Australia. They had boats on the water looking, people in the water. They had people like probing the sand dunes all across the beach, surrounding suburbs, everything. They were looking for the kids, and it was covered really well all over the TVs, newspapers at the time.
So the first thing, over here towards this ridge, right? You can break line now and come over. I can just remember thinking, being in panic. Yeah. But I kept on thinking, you know, she's such a sensible girl that she would get a message to someone.
Anna and Grant Beaumont have been missing, and it's the 4th time that the police have searched this area of the Sandhills.
I'm probably going to say this incorrect, but it's a Patawallalong. I'll be saying it incorrect. I'll pop it up on screen. The name, Boat Haven, on the 29th of January was actually drained after a woman told police that she'd seen and spoken to the children at that place on the day of their disappearance. This was reportedly to have been around 7 p.m. It wasn't confirmed it was the Beaumont children she spoke to, but she was confident that they looked exactly like the kids she spoke to. So they did drain the Boat Haven to sadly look to see if their bodies had ended up in the Boat Haven. They searched the area very thoroughly, but nothing was found. So eventually this case got worldwide attention, and it became a bit of a frenzy everywhere because nobody could comprehend how 3 siblings went missing at once and nobody seemed to have an idea of where they went. There was no bags, nothing. They did have quite a few towels and bags when they went to the beach that day, but nothing was found. Apparently the police were overwhelmed with people calling in and showing up saying that they had seen the kids that day, giving in theories to what they thought happened. All of this, that they were overwhelmed and didn't know what to do with all the information. They checked quite a few of the leads, but from what I read, they were very young, the police that were working there, or new, and they didn't look into every lead. There was so much going on, and eventually there ended up being quite a few hoax letters coming in and people just trying to take the piss, and which is really, really sad. I'll only talk briefly about this part, but a well-known psychic from the Netherlands actually flew down to Adelaide on the 8th of November 1966, claiming to know where the children had been buried. He had had a vision. This man apparently was credible, and when he arrived, it was such a big deal. My mum said she remembers it being on the TV, and they compared it to if the Beatles had come down. He was treated like a celebrity, it was very big deal that he came down and knew where the kids were. His name was Gerald Croisset. I might be saying that incorrectly once again. So he had a vision that the kids' bodies were buried under concrete at an old brick factory. So they started going down different areas with him, trying to pinpoint which one it could have been. But it was quite specific, he was very certain that their bodies were buried under concrete. So he actually identified out a site, and an excavation was done to that site. That fresh concrete had been put down, and he pointed it out and said, yep, this is the place. Nothing came of it. They did do an excavation, but nothing was found, and he ended up flying back, and he pretty much didn't do anything to help, but he is still convinced to this day that they are buried at an old brick building site where the fresh concrete was laid down and their bodies will be under the concrete. So years later, they actually demolished the site where they did the excavation. So they did another excavation once it had been demolished, and they still found absolutely nothing at this site. So this is kind of take what you want from it. He could be right because he has been credible in the past, but it didn't lead to anything. That's why I didn't want to go in too much detail about this man, as it kind of led to nothing. But it's just crazy that psychics were, considered credible back then. So now we're going to go over some of the suspects to this case, and there was so many. I looked into quite a few of them. I'll list some of the names and what they were known for and convicted for, but there is one particular person that we will be going over today because I just feel like there's so much evidence against this one man. I don't know, out of all the ones, I truly believe he did it. I'll just go over briefly now some of the top suspects that were looked into for the disappearance of the Beaumont children. So the first one is Derek Percy. He was a convicted murderer and a suspected serial killer. One is Anthony Monroe. He was another notorious pedophile. Actually insane how many pedophiles and murderers were around this time. It's just terrifying how many of these people were in Adelaide at the time. It's scary. Bevan Einman, I definitely feel like I'm saying his first name incorrectly. He was convicted of murdering a 15-year-old, but he's been responsible for the killings of multiple children between the 70s and 80s. What's interesting about this guy is during the draining of the boat havens, people were taking photographs of everybody standing around watching on, and one of the photographs that was actually taken of a group of people standing was actually a man who was a spitting image apparently of Bevan, which is creepy. They never identified the man in the photograph, but many have suspected that they reckon it was him watching on, and this would be kind of incriminating a little bit because normally the murderers try to get quite involved with the community and the case to find out like what they're finding out, information kind of thing. So if this had been him, it would be suspicious, put it that way. But yeah, it was never identified that it was him, and he's never confirmed. So as you can see, there are many suspects for this case, and there's even more again than just the ones that I listed. I'll be going in more detail in just a little bit on a man called Harry, also known as the Silk Man, but I just want to talk about some of the suspect sightings. And there actually was a drawing made up of a man seen with the children the day of the beach that is like a spitting image of the guy that we're going to talk about in just a second. So the man that was identified to have been seen with the children was described as tall, thin-faced, he was blonde, he had a suntan complexion, thin to athletic build, and he was meant to be in his mid-30s, like around that age. He was apparently seen playing with the kids on the beach and then later seen walking off with the kids. The parents thought this was absolutely bizarre because all of their children were very shy and they were known not to go speak to strangers, so this led the parents to believe that this guy man wasn't a stranger to these kids. Like I said, this wasn't the first time the kids had gone to this beach, so I kind of feel like, and the parents apparently feel like, this man was grooming the kids, had gone to them before, gotten familiar, comfortable with them, and eventually he's taken these kids. So a shopkeeper at Wenzel's Bakery spotted the children coming in to buy lunch with a $1 bill. The reason the shopkeeper took note of this because he had seen the kids before, and it was very unusual for them to have a $1 bill. I know this sounds crazy, but apparently $1 bill back then was a lot of money. So this is where it becomes suspicious because Jane, she was only ever given coins, so this $1 bill has come out of nowhere. So it was suspected that this man that had walked off with the kids at the beach had given them a $1 bill to go buy lunch. And another thing that stood out for the shopkeeper, he was familiar with these kids. They've never gone in and bought a meat pie before, so it was believed that these kids went in and bought the one meat pie for the man outside who was seen with the kids. So another spotting was at 3 p.m. A postman did spot the children walking in the direction of their house. They were all holding hands and laughing. Apparently this report was a reliable source, so this man definitely saw the kids at 3 p.m. walking in that direction. I could actually go on for ages about suspected sightings of the kids, potential suspects, because there was once again so many reportings. There was even hoax letters that happened that were later found out to be hoax. But I just feel like it's not really necessary, and this video will drag out for ages. I just want to give you all the information that I found quite significant. So we're going to go straight into the man that I believe has done it and has so much incriminating evidence against him. A book was actually written about him, so he's referred to as the Silk Man, which I will explain in just a little bit. It's very creepy. So the man referred to as Silk Man, his real name is actually Harry Phipps. He fits the description of the man that was seen with the kids that day to the T. So Harry was a millionaire factory owner and a father of two. He was a part of Adelaide's social elite, so he was very respected in Adelaide. He was very well respected, had really good connections, and he was a very powerful man within Adelaide. He lived only 300 metres from Glenelg Beach, where the Beaumont children went missing. He was a very wealthy man who had a habit of handing out $1 bills, which is what Jane was seen with the children buying from the deli. I mean, it's not too condemning that he liked to hand out $1 bills. So in 2013, his son Hayden came forward to the police stating that he believes his father may have had something to do with the Beaumont children's disappearance. The reason he came forward so many years later is because his wife at the time, they were just watching the news and something came up about the Beaumont children when Hayden said to his wife that he believes that his father Harry had something to do with their disappearance. And with her encouragement, he basically said to him, like, I believe you should go forward to the police with this information, to which he did. So Hayden went into the police and basically said that he saw his father bring the Beaumont children to their house on the day of their disappearance. He also came forward about the horrible abuse he had endured by his father growing up. He said that his father was extremely violent and he really feared him, especially behind closed doors. He was a completely different man outside, where he was respected and well known to what he was behind closed doors, which is normally the case with these people that aren't very stable. So Hayden said that his father was actually forced to be dressed like a girl up until the age of 5. During that time, he developed a fetish for silk dresses. So his mother actually made gowns for him, normally out of silk because it was his favorite fabric, and he took on this fetish of women's silk gowns up until his adulthood. He reportedly couldn't control himself sexually when in these silk women's gowns. So Hayden talks about how he would go to bed at night and he would hear this swooshing sound of his father coming down the hallway. This would have just been absolutely terrifying. He knew when his father was in the satin gown that he was going to be sexually assaulted. So apparently he would sexually assault his son up to 3 times a week, and it would be very violent. And this went on until he was about 15 years old, when he was strong enough to fight off his father. So another victim of Harry Phipps many years later came forward, identifying him as the man that sexually assaulted her on her way home from school one day when she was just 14 years old. Her name was Linda. This had apparently been a very violent rape, but she never came forward to anyone just because she believed that if she had told her father, he would have blamed her for it and it just would have become a bigger issue. This is so heartbreaking, and I hear it so often around those times where the girls would get in trouble for getting sexually assaulted. So not too many years ago, Amanda Stewart was invited to have a look around Harry's house. Harry had passed away many years ago, so it was just his wife living there, and Hayden, his son, unfortunately passed away not too long after giving the statements to the police. So Stewart was invited into Harry's house, old house, by his wife to look around for any evidence. So while looking around the house, he ended up in the basement and he found this white clip purse, which later, after he left the house, realized that it was pretty much a spitting image of the one that Jane had the day that she went missing. It was a vintage style white clip purse, and he didn't realize until after, that it could have been a link to the Beaumont children. So after leaving, Stewart spoke to his associate about the purse, saying how he believes it could be a link, and that man agreed. So he ended up calling back Harry's wife to ask to come back and look around again and explain to her how the purse could be the link to the Beaumont children. So he had told her this while in the house the second time, and she became a little bit uncomfortable apparently and agitated, saying that she had bought the purse from an op shop only the other week and that it would have absolutely no link to the Beaumont children, and apparently urged him to leave after asking that question, which is suspicious. And another thing that's really bizarre, which he said and pointed out, if you just bought a purse from an op shop a week ago, what's it doing in the basement with dust on it? He was never invited back. So on the day of the disappearance, apparently Hayden was out bowling and came home around in the afternoon. While at the back, he saw his father walk in 3 children that he believed were the Beaumont children into the house, and he said that he heard 4 gunshots. So there's 3 kids and he apparently heard 4 gunshots. And he said he didn't think much of this because his father always shot guns, his father always carried a gun. He just didn't think anything of it and believed that the children had just left out the front door afterwards. Later that day, he saw his father loading up these surfboard bags into his truck or ute at the time. He also didn't think this was unusual, as his father often went to the beach to surf, so this is where the surf covers came into it. So he just didn't really think anything of it. So 2 young brothers, who was named David, who was 15, and Robin, who was 17, came forward many years later once again, claiming that Harry, back when these kids went missing, either that day or the day after, approached them, offering them money to dig a hole for him. Apparently he offered them really good money to dig this hole, so these brothers took up the offer, as they used to do odd jobs to make money. They didn't really think anything of it. Apparently it was a very specific sized hole that he wanted dug, which once again is very bizarre, and he used to apparently just stand at his truck and watch them dig, and he would come over every now and again and say it's not deep enough, it's not wide enough, it's not this. He drove off sometimes and would come back, and he urged to them how important it was to be done in a certain time frame. He wanted it dug up and done very, very quickly, and it was stinking hot weather. It was 40 degrees when these boys were trying to dig this hole, but Harry didn't care. He wanted it done very quickly. So this was apparently dug and done near his factory that he owned over the long weekend. He never told these boys what the hole was for, and the boys never asked. So this happened in the Castello factory, and that's what these men said when they heard that the Castello factory was a place of interest to where the Beaumont children could be buried or found. This is when they came forward and realised they had dug a hole on the long weekend that the Beaumont children went missing at the Castello factory for Harry Phipps. So yeah, that's all these different links. And remember back to the psychic, he had said that the kids were buried at a factory brick kind of building. The concrete doesn't quite link into it, but I thought the factory was a little bit creepy. It was quite, you could link it a little bit. So an excavation of the factory, or where they believed these men had dug this hole, was done on the 2nd of February 2018. But unfortunately nothing was found besides rubbish and animal bones. They didn't dig up the whole site, they just dug up the area they believed they had dug the hole in the first place, and they used certain technology in the ground to see where the ground had been disturbed, so they dug up those areas. But yeah, absolutely nothing was found on that. So my final thoughts and theories. I personally feel like Harry, out of all the other suspects, just has so much evidence piling up against him that it's just unfortunate he's dead, that they can't interrogate him a little bit more. And this is what will make this case really hard to solve, is the fact that Harry is dead, now his son's dead, that they might never figure out if he actually did it. I just think there's so much evidence against this guy, like walking the kids into the house, gunshots going off, loading up the surf bags, getting these men to dig a hole. Like it all kind of links back to this guy. And he was like a sexual predator, assaulting his own child. He was also apparently quite violent to his wife. I also think maybe they didn't excavate the place where they believed they dug this hole properly. They should have dug up the whole thing. So I believe they need to do a better excavation. Also, another thing is the men that dug this hole, it's years later. They could have just forgotten the exact part where they dug the hole. Also, another theory is that somebody could have come back years later and redug up the hole and disposed of the bones somewhere else. I asked my aunties and, you know, my mum, all of the people that were around when this case actually happened, what they believe may have happened, because they would have heard the rumors and everything that was going on at the time. A lot of them believe that the kids were just abducted and had their names changed and are living with like a random family somewhere else in Australia under different names. So it is popular theory that people believe they're not dead. That's why nothing was found. They were just abducted and are living with their captors. Another popular theory is a witness actually came forward 7 months after the children went missing, claiming that she had seen the Beaumont children with a man walk into an abandoned house and she never saw the kids walk out of the house. This was with a grown man. Once again, she saw the grown man leave, but not the kids. She said that she did see a young boy walking out of this house, running apparently, where the grown man did grab the kid and bring him back into the house. I just find this so suspicious how it took her 7 months to come forward with this information. And that's what made it not that credible, because it was such a big thing. Like, there's no way you could have been in Adelaide at the time and not known that the Beaumont children went missing. And if she'd seen that, she would have known straight away. So why wait 7 months to come forward with this information? So yeah, like I said, there was many suspects for this case, which I will leave the Wikipedia link down below, which actually links to all the main suspects they had for this case. I didn't go into detail because it would have been here for a very long time. I personally believe this man, Harry Phipps, has done it. So this case has been going on for many years. I do believe that the parents of the Beaumont children have actually passed away now, which is horrible. I do hope in my lifetime we will find out what happened to these kids, but it is so many years ago now. Guys, let me know down in the comments what you believe happened to these kids, any theories you've got, anything I missed out on. But that is the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It was my first murder mystery video. Let me know down in the comments if you liked it, and once again, any theories or beliefs that you have on this case, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!